With UFC 319 just around the corner and a lot of people hyping up Khamzat Chimaev in his first ever title fight in the UFC, a lot of fans are forgetting to ask themselves the question, what happens if Khamzat Chimaev loses to Dricus Du Plessis at UFC 319? In this video, I will cover what happens to Khamzat Chimaev, Dricus Du Plessis, and the rest of the UFC middleweight division if Khamzat Chimaev loses at UFC 319. So super fast summary of how we got to this point. Khamzat Chimaev is currently 14-0 in MMA, and he is undefeated since coming to the UFC. Back when he originally joined the UFC around 2020, he was much more active in his UFC career, fighting many times a year, whereas the past 2 or 3 years, he only has fought 1 time a year. Khamzat Chimaev has battled various issues throughout his UFC career, mainly his health concerns. However, through all the struggles, he has managed to remain undefeated, with most recently an impressive first-round submission win against Robert Whittaker, who has been a long-time great fighter in the UFC middleweight division. And Khamzat Chimaev now has his chance to win his first championship in the UFC next month at UFC 319 against Dricus Du Plessis. They will be fighting for the middleweight championship. And this leaves us with the question, what if Khamzat Chimaev loses this fight? Real quick, I want to thank you guys for getting me to 900 subscribers. It's been a dream of mine forever to get to 1,000 subscribers, and it's finally in reach. We tried to get to 900 by the end of July, and we got there about a week early. So before the end of August, we'd like to get to 1,000 subscribers, so every subscribe goes a long way. And liking the video also helps out more than you guys could imagine. So I want to thank you guys for doing those things, and let's get right into this video. So how bad would a loss be for Khamzat Chimaev at this stage of his career? Normally, if you're undefeated and suffer 1 loss, even if it's in a title fight, it's normally not too detrimental for your career. Because if you've been undefeated this long and you lose in a title fight, you're still a very good prospect for that division and the UFC as a whole, so you're likely to see another title fight in the future if you can maintain your status. So very few UFC fighters ever go undefeated in their career, so to say that this loss would absolutely ruin his career would be a bold-faced lie. However, given Khamzat Chimaev certain circumstances, it could be more detrimental than your average undefeated UFC superstar losing his first ever fight. Now, for most UFC superstars, if you got to this stage in your career where you're undefeated and you lose in a title fight, especially if you're someone like Khamzat Chimaev where you have this level of popularity and fame and hype in the UFC, you probably only need 1 win at most to get back to a title fight. I mean, look at Sean O'Malley, for example. He loses and gets an immediate title rematch, and many people say it was undeserved. I know it's a different situation than this one, but the superstars do get better treatment, especially if you're undefeated. However, there's a glaring problem currently with Khamzat Chimaev's career, and it is his inactivity. That's right, Khamzat Chimaev used to fight 3, 4, 5 times a year. Over the past 2 or 3 years, he's only fought on average once per year. And this is a big problem for the UFC. If Khamzat Chimaev wins a title and he still only fights once per year, this slows up the entire division and causes many problems for the UFC. I made a whole video on this topic that I will pop up here, and you can go watch that after this video, but stay with me for right now. So I don't believe the UFC would be too keen on giving Khamzat Chimaev an immediate rematch for the title, especially since he's never held the title before, even though he has a ton of popularity. And looking at the 185-pound division, it is a very good division right now. While it's not as good as the 170-pound division, which I'll have another video about that coming out soon, the 185-pound division does have a lot of good fighters in the title picture right now. And I do think that if Khamzat Chimaev loses at UFC 319, he will need 1 or 2 good wins to get himself back at another title shot against whoever has the belt. But looking at fighters like Israel Adesanya, Strickland, Robert Whittaker, and even Jared Cannonier, they're all out of the title picture. I know Jared Cannonier is doing good, but he's very old at this stage. Israel Adesanya is coming off of multiple losses in his recent fights. Strickland's already lost twice to Dricus Du Plessis, and Robert Whittaker is now on a 2-fight losing streak after last weekend's fights. So I think this may sound pretty open for Khamzat Chimaev to get back up to a rematch, and it relatively is. There are a number of contenders such as Imavov, Caio Borralho, maybe Paulo Costa now, and Reiner de Ritter, who are all looking to get title shots as well. And so if you didn't know, Imavov and Caio Borralho are fighting soon, and whoever wins that fight is most likely going to be fighting for the championship next, unless Khamzat Chimaev wins and they do him versus Dricus Du Plessis in a rematch. But in this scenario, we're talking about if Khamzat Chimaev loses at UFC 319, and I think the most likely opponent for him will be the loser of Caio Borralho versus Imavov, and then whoever wins that fight would face the winner of Dricus Du Plessis versus the previous winner of Imavov versus Borralho. And I know Reinier de Ridder just got a good win against Robert Whittaker, but I think he needs another win against a Strickland or Israel Adesanya, and then he will be in that title picture. He's being fast-tracked to the top of the division right now, but he was just ranked 13th and beat Robert Whittaker. He still needs another win or two before having that title match. So while I do think if Khamzat Chimaev loses, he'll face the loser of Imavov versus Borralho, I think that there is chance for him to fight Paulo Costa because they have previous beef there. They were supposed to fight in the past, but the fight got canceled, and they're always arguing with each other on Twitter and in person. It's been pretty funny over the years to watch, and they're both fan favorite fighters. And then there's also the potential for a fight against Reinier de Ridder. Reinier de Ridder just called out Khamzat Chimaev after his win the other day against Robert Whittaker. Both those fights would be great matchups, although I still think, like I said, it's most likely he'll fight the loser of Imavov versus Borralho, which will be a great matchup, whoever that is. And after 1 or 2 wins for Khamzat Chimaev here, he will immediately be back in the title picture. Given his previous record and his level of fame, it will not be too hard to work himself back into that picture. The only thing holding him back is his activity level. He needs to fight more than once per year if he wants to make this happen. If he loses in this title match and he's still only fighting once per year, the UFC is not going to rush him back into a title fight. They do not want an inactive champion. They just had one with John Jones, and the UFC was not happy with that situation. Another outcome is that Khamzat Chimaev moves back down to the 170-pound division. He previously had a lot of success there and has multiple wins at that division. However, I don't see this as a possibility. Khamzat Chimaev has way too many health problems and way too many problems cutting weight that were very evident at the 170-pound welterweight division, that if he dropped back down right there, I think that would be horrible for his career, and especially now because the 170-pound division is stacked with like 7 contenders trying to fight for the title right now. I used to say that the welterweight division sucked, but it is generally one of the best, if not the best divisions in the UFC right now, and for Khamzat Chimaev to waltz into there would be a bad idea. Or Khamzat Chimaev could go up to 205. However, I think with Magomed Ankalaev as the champion there, due to Magomed's well-roundedness and his size advantage he'd have over Khamzat Chimaev, I think that'd be a very tough opponent for Khamzat to beat. And the final option is for him to retire. I made a whole video about this because there was a rumor that came out the other week about it, so go check that out if you'd like. However, I don't think this is too likely, although it is possible for Khamzat Chimaev because he's had so many health issues in the past and he does have a boatload of money, as evident with the lifestyle that he lives. It wouldn't be totally unreasonable for him to retire. But you could watch that full video after this one. But with that being said, thank you guys for making it to the end of this video, and thank you for liking and subscribing. They help out more than you guys could ever know, and we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So with that being said, let me know down below, what do you guys think? What's next for Khamzat Chimaev if he loses at UFC 319? And do you think he will win or lose at UFC 319? But I will see you guys in the next video later this week. Deuces.